Hey, what's up, Unbroken Nation? I just can't help but think like how many times doctors tried to put me on medication. And this was in the late 80s, early 90s. And honestly, I would just throw it away. I used to get in so much trouble, but I was like, I'm not taking this. This is crazy to me. One of the things that really stuck out to me about the title of your book is you labeled it ADHD symptoms. And I think so often people look at this as a mental disorder. So what I think would be very practical to start this conversation with is twofold. One, can you define ADHD? And two, can we look at the symptoms as opposed to this being a disorder?
Excellent question. I love that because it really puts into focus for anyone who's listening that we really have to drill down and see what's going on with the kid. ADHD is a list of symptoms, real symptoms definitely exist. The kid is struggling, the kid's having a hard time. And these symptoms are caused by many different things, which is why I said before it's extremely simplistic. So in my case, not being able to focus was coming from stress at home. And the minute I was able to work that out, my focus came back into order and I was able to get going and really rise to the top of my class. I was actually SW valedictorian in graduate school. It took a long time to get there. But what we're seeing with kids with ADHD symptoms is difficult symptoms. And what we're not doing is asking the question, why? Why is this child struggling? And there are so many different reasons why a child's struggling. And when I listen to your story, I say to myself, wow, I would have said about you, that sounds like an instant gratification personality, because that's a person who's interested in being active. Things and everything around him is draws him in. He likes to build things, create things, and all that. But they're sticking him into a box he doesn't fit in. Of course, usually ADHD comes with multiple causes. It could be trauma plus a instant gratification personality. We can throw into that screen addiction or other addictions, which are crushing to kids. And we have lack of nature, lack of movement and exercise, which is really bad. And another big one that I see all the time, especially with younger kids, is a gut dysbiosis. So the kids are just not physically healthy. They're not doing well physically. You see runny noses and bad skin and headaches, stomach aches, asthma, allergies, autoimmune conditions. And instead of saying, well, maybe what's going on is physiological, we're saying, oh, he has asthma and a comorbid ADHD. Well, what came first and what's causing what? And that's something that we're not asking the questions of. So when we look at the DSM-5, the diagnostic manual, we just looking at a checklist, and it's kind of like odd to me. And as a mom, when my oldest was diagnosed, I said, well, how did you diagnose her? Well, you see, you filled out this checklist and the teacher filled out this checklist, and therefore she's got ADHD, which is a neurological condition. And where'd you get the checklist from? And what does that mean? What does that mean to us? It means that we're seeing external symptoms, but shall we ask why she's having these external symptoms? This is a kid who moved to 3 different countries. She's trilingual at the time that she was diagnosed, reading and writing in 3 different languages. Maybe we want to look at her background and see what else might be going on along the way. So the symptoms are real. And what I think is hurting children the most is that we never ask the question why. And that's a real shame.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, I think about quite often this idea that we kind of get pigeonholed into these boxes based on lists that really have no foundational evidence on your particular DNA. And, I think about the idea that doctors particularly, and I'm not trying to like throw doctors under the bus here, I promise, but, you're in this situation where maybe you're ill or you're sick or something's wrong, and they go, oh, it's in your family, it's in your DNA, it's in your genes.
Right.
And I'm like, well, what gene is it? Can you tell me? Can you give me the exact gene that this has been traveled down through for generations that led me to this place? And they can't. They'll be stymied and dumbfounded because it's, for many things, I just don't think it's true. Now, that said, like, I definitely think that you mentioned something about an instant gratification personality. That's really fascinating to me. And what I'm curious about is, are there other personalities that kind of fall within these different chasms?
Well, every personality is different, and personalities are healthy. When you look at yourself, you say, okay, who I'm more similar to, my mother, my father, an aunt, uncle. You're going to find yourself in the family, not perfectly, because you're a different combination of person, but we are going to find ourselves within the family. All personality types are healthy variants of a personality. And therefore, we have to look at it and say, okay, what are the strengths and weaknesses of this personality? I see mainly that instant gratification is we're going to see more ADHD symptoms with that kind of personality. That's that type that's just wants everything here and now and fast and interesting and fun and slightly dangerous. I know my kids were always the ones that climbed to the top of the monkey bars first, and we're just kind of dangling off of it with one leg. So there's that. Of course, you're going to have the ADHD which is the more passive type. The kid who's kind of unengaged, but they're not unengaged. They're in a dream world where everything is fascinating for them, and they're escaping this here and now world, but they're finding something that interests them. They're always finding something else that interests them because they don't want to be where they are right now. So I think those two are very similar, although, and I always use this example that let's say you have a kid who's kind of a shy kid. So a shy kid might do great at tasks that require real good focus and other things like that. But that shy kid is going to struggle when it comes to engaging their environment and making friends. So they have their strengths and then they have their challenges. ADHD, which is when it is caused by an instant gratification, they have their strengths in that they integrate with their environment very quickly. That's the kid who's going to walk over to a stranger and ask a question and learn something new very fast. And that's the kid who's going to find novelty. And I say that this would be an inventor, a scientist, someone who's in high tech, an entrepreneur, someone like you, kind of, getting out there and spreading your voice and your story and helping people out in a very unique way. So those people are the ones that are going to shine there, whereas someone who doesn't engage as quickly because they're shy is not going to do as well in that kind of environment. So we have to look at each environment and figure out what we're going to build. We love that novelty. We love that you're looking for new things all the time and seeing things other people don't see. But we're having trouble with the fact that when you do that, you don't develop habits. You don't develop habits because you're not doing things over and over again, because you're always jumping from one novel idea to the next. Once it gets boring and you have to dot the I's and cross the T's, you don't want to do it anymore. So the two things we're learning is, okay, we've got to work on habits. And number two, we've got to pair you up with somebody who's good at that. Nobody lives in a vacuum. We're in a kind of a weird world where everybody kind of lives for themselves and is expected to be this kind of perfect being. But that's not the way we're meant to live. We're meant to live within community, where one person has a strength in getting out to the forest and finding the food, and the other person has a strength in organizing it when that person brings it home. Now, obviously, I'm going back a couple of generations here, but that's an example for what we would talk about, that we are meant to work together. So one kid's an accountant and the other kid's an entrepreneur. Let's put them together. They're going to make a great team.